join committees that are within your school, because there are people who will see you as a fellow teacher in a way that maybe they didn't before, or they will get to hear your perspective about things that are happening in the library on how you can support different initiatives within your building. So you have those allies that come on board with you.
Hello, friends, and welcome to Season 5 of the Future Ready Librarian Podcast Series, Leading from the Library. This is a podcast for all librarians, wherever you are in your journey. It is filled with amazing guests, important topics, and engaging conversations that will inspire, engage, and support all of us as future ready librarians. I am your host, Shannon McClintock Miller. I am the district teacher librarian at Van Meter Community School in Van Meter, Iowa, and I serve as the Future Ready Librarian spokesperson. I have the pleasure of working within my library and school community and also with others around the country and world through Future Ready Librarian events, conferences, consulting, writing, and more. I'm honored to bring these voices and the work of others to our podcast and to all of you. And today, I am so excited to welcome my friend and amazing librarian, Courtney, to the show. She's my next door neighbor in Nebraska. And Courtney, I'm so glad that you're here today.
Me too. Thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to come hang out with you virtually.
Yes, I know. I'm so happy. And why don't we just start by having you share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So currently I am a high school librarian in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I have previously, for like a hot minute, I was an elementary librarian. It was the first COVID year, so it was really 3/4 of a year that we were in person. Before that, I worked in a district library services department, and before that, I was a high school librarian and high school teacher. So I feel like I've had an opportunity to get to work with and talk with a lot of people through my district jobs. And then I am starting my 12th year as an adjunct faculty member for the University of Nebraska Omaha's school library program, where advocacy is a huge thing that's a component in all of our courses. Because school librarians have to advocate for lots of things, as other teachers maybe do not in the same way that we do. And then I have worked with our Nebraska School Librarians Association for, about a decade, within the board in some way, shape, or form. This is our advocacy right here. The Nebraska Needs Librarian shirts is something that we did at one point. And I got to know lovely people through that from all over our state, and had the opportunity to be the delegate to AASL. So I got to know people from all over the country. And it's been an absolute honor to serve in those many different ways. And while I am not speaking on behalf of any of the organizations that I am a part of or working with, I do bring all of my experiences with those groups into play when I think about an important topic like advocacy, because I have learned so much from our colleagues across the country and across our state.
Oh, great. I know there's nothing like that, right? Like not only the work that we do, but also all the voices of others. And we're so lucky now because we're connected in so many ways with each other, and the stories and what we learn and the knowledge that we have has never been more important. And when I asked Courtney to be part of the show, what she wanted to talk about today was just that. And the topic of sharing your story and how we need accurate narratives of the school library. And I can't think of a more timely time of year and time within librarianship to talk about this. And so one of the first things that I just want to ask is that very thing, like the why we need accurate narratives of school libraries.
I feel like since the dawn of time of school libraries, the idea of what we do and what happens in our spaces has maybe not been incredibly clear to the people we work with every day in our buildings, and especially not to our communities who are not in there every day. I know that there's perspectives based off of like what our school libraries were like when we were younger. You know, we have people who believe that the experience that they have in the school library when they were children or young adults is what their children are having. And there's never really been clarity, which is why advocacy is a huge part of what we teach in our school library programs and things that we focus on within our national and local organizations to get that word out. We have spent, ever since I was a librarian, a while since I started, and I know people well before me have talked about the need for school librarians. We are very lucky in our state that we currently have a state rule that requires school librarians in every building. That got sort of challenged a couple years ago. So there were huge advocacy pushes on that to explain why we were needed and why it was necessary to have a rule for that. But there's lots of other places who don't have that. So they're fighting to have that very vital person there to serve their school communities. And then we have people who have no budget. They have no money to provide the resources that a school library should be providing to their communities, or they are used in ways that is not really school library. You become the Chromebook tech support, and that's what takes up a whole bunch of your day. Or you are given intervention programs, or you're given supervision duties, and the actual library work is very secondary to that. So we are not unaware of why advocacy is important and what we should be doing. We've been advocating forever for lots of different reasons, but it has gotten, I would say, a little different in the way that we have to advocate in the climate now than it was 10 years ago, 5 years ago even. We know that the challenges to books, the questions for intellectual freedom, the idea that databases need to be regulated more than they already are by the companies that provide them. There's a lot of hostility. There's a lot of open anger that is happening at school board meetings, both local and state school board meetings. We're seeing legislation that is counterintuitive to our school library Bill of Rights, that we have First Amendment rights that have been upheld by the Constitution and by the Supreme Court, because there are folks who are claiming that school libraries and school librarians are indoctrinating children, that they are grooming children. And those narratives are very loud right now. Yeah. And they are very much at the forefront. But if you look at polls and conversations that you have with people, that is not the general sentiment. But those voices aren't vocal. We're hearing the people who are making claims that are destructive to our mission of supporting every student in our care. And that's what's being heard. That's what is being shown. That is who is showing up to meetings. And it's very hard for us to argue against that using our own voices. Yeah. So obviously we feel a certain way about school librarianship because we are school librarians, but we need people in our corner to tell our story, to help us tell our story. But they don't know what to say if we haven't shared our story first. so we're in this very difficult time right now where we have people who support us, who would advocate on our behalf, but they're maybe not quite sure how to go about doing that or what to say, or they are concerned about being targeted by the groups who are being vocal, because we have seen some very negative behavior and threatening behavior from some members of our communities, and people may not want to attend in person and become a target as well. So how do we go about that? How do we make sure that what is truly happening in our libraries, what we are really doing with our students as we provide instruction and we select materials, how do we get that message out to counteract maybe some of the false narratives that are being shared?
Yeah, and I think that is something really not only to think about like how important advocacy is, but getting other people that they know other people on our side. So for example, like our administrators know what we're doing, our school board members know what we're doing, our families know what we're doing, and of course, like all of us in our community of librarians. And so when you think about that, what advice do you have or things that you have done just to make sure that within your own community that all of those stakeholders understand all the great things that you're doing?
So one of the things is to be sure that, number one, you are sharing your story. Like that is important. In some way, shape, or form, get that information out to your stakeholders. So that could be a newsletter that you're sharing with your staff. It could be like I have a running Word doc or Google Doc that I put in what I've done throughout the day that my administrator is attached to. So at any given point, they can go in and see all what I did during that day. I mean, like last week, all it said was Chromebooks, but like starting this week, it's a little bit more than that. So they can see all of the different areas that we influence and that we help with. Join committees that are within your school, because there are people who will see you as a fellow teacher in a way that maybe they didn't before, or they will get to hear your perspective about things that are happening in the library on how you can support different initiatives within your building. So you have those allies that come on board with you. Put information in your parent newsletter. Like if you have a letter that goes home every week, put something in there to your parents about the kinds of lessons that students are having, or new books that you've added to the library, or that kind of information. Like make sure that it's getting out there. If you have access to the school's social media account, make sure that you are putting forth things that are going on in the library just as much as other places in your building. You sharing that message out with other people gives them vocabulary and knowledge to be able to say, this is what, when someone makes a claim about what they think is going on in school libraries, they can say, I don't think so. My kid's school, we get something in the newsletter every week, and these are the kinds of things that our librarian is doing. I don't know that what you're telling me is what's happening in the school my kid goes to, at least. So you have some of that language there. If you can blog about things, like write professional articles for different publications, submit those things out there. That was one of the first things I did, to be able to say, like, here, this national publication is featuring things that we are doing in our school. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. So get involved in those pieces. Be involved in leadership within your building and your district. Anytime that there's curriculum writing, I jump on those committees.
Oh, yeah.
because like it helps me know what the curriculum is, but again, it also gives me a way to connect with people at the school and district level that is like, hey, don't forget the school library piece. Here's what we can do. And just the light bulb that goes off for some folks, they're like, oh, I had no idea that we had access to all of these resources. Mm-hmm. And you're like, but it's been in the in the school newsletter for the last 2 years. Sometimes that personal conversation makes a big difference. So really get out and share your story so that other people know what to say.
Yeah.
And then, if people ask, you could on your own personal social media share with your friends and loved ones what they could do to support folks. So like the freedom fighters in Texas have some really great resources on like how to contact a school board, what kinds of things to say. Those are things that you could forward out on your own personal behalf. Your district may have specific guidelines as to what you can and cannot share that is considered political. So make sure before you do anything that way that you're checking with what your school district allows. Mm-hmm. Everybody's a little bit different, so just kind of make sure that you know what that is. And provide people with the ability to share your story with actual specific information. That's the first thing that I would say.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, all of those things are just not only helpful, but truly can like show what we do in a true light, because it's us sharing that story, and nobody can share our story like us, but we want other advocates in our corner that can share those things that are happening from the library too. One thing too that I know, especially, as we go back to school and we get ready for another great year, a lot of times I'm sure that some of the listeners who are with us today are thinking like, how can I keep up with that? Like, how can I do all those things? And also what we do as librarians. I get that question a lot because that like advocacy burnout is a real thing.
Yeah, that's one of the talking points that we have for tonight. Like the struggle is real, my friends. It is the amount of directions that we are pulled in, and just the amount of times that you are interrupted in a thought during a day. Like I will have tried to start something 5 or 6 times, and 45 minutes later, I'm swinging back to it. I'm like, what was I doing? Like, I know I had a purpose. What was it? Because I've been asked to do, a bunch of things in between. So we have that burnout, like just our job burnout. And then you add this extra layer of why do I have to constantly advocate for my existence? Like that whole level on top of that. And then we add the piece in now where I have to be very careful and conscious of when I am looking at things, because I cannot be informed 24/7 and be a functioning human. Like, it's really difficult to look at all of the things that are going on all of the time. Like I have to set aside times and say, okay, I know I see this article, there was one from USA Today that was on Twitter that I thought was fantastic, but I could not in that moment read it. So I just left it open. I went back and read it later. But there's a lot of things I want to know about, but I need to give myself the space to do that. Mm-hmm. So be sure that you're taking care of yourself. Like do what you are able to do. And don't feel like you have to be perfect.
Yeah.
In any of this. Like when we're talking about a newsletter, it does not have to be like the most beautiful thing in the world. It doesn't have to be Canva perfection. Like go ahead and just put it on a Google or Word doc. Start there. That's what I did when I first started, was I would throw some pictures and some text and I'd print it out and put it in the staff bathroom.
Yeah.
And that's where I started. And now I only do them like once a quarter. because I know what I can handle. But, think about what's going to work within your sphere, your sphere of energy, and what you think is going to land the best with your people. That's the other piece. If you have an administrator who really responds to data, they don't care so much about like the personal stories from testimonials from people. They want to know the data. But you may have your administrator may be the opposite, and they really don't care about the numbers. They want to hear from the people who are using your services. So knowing who your audience is and what they respond to best can help you really target your advocacy, so you're not just throwing things out there that never really stick.
Yeah, that's super good advice. People. Yes, that's great advice. Well, and I think that, as we also understand that and like take off little things that we can, like even doing one thing different and adding one thing, if it's a newsletter or if it's attending a school board meeting or if it's talking to parents at back to school night or, having a book fair, like anything that you do, that one thing is going to make a difference. And so giving ourselves a break and making sure, again, just like we said, making sure that we're sharing our story in whatever way we feel empowered and capable to do so, which is a great thing.
And think about like inviting people into your space.
Yeah.
If you may be on appraisal, you may not. So people may not be cycling through, but ask your instructional coach to come in, ask your administrators to come in, invite teachers to come in and observe what's happening. Like a lot of times they drop their students off in elementary and they leave because that's their plan time. But say, hey, if you ever want to, sit at the desk and work and just kind of observe what's going on, you are welcome to do that. Invite your school board members in, invite your PTO in, like get those folks into your space so they can see what you do. So again, they are being provided with examples, specific things like, I saw this happen. It wasn't just the school librarian told me, but I with my own eyes saw this occurring in the school library, and wasn't that fantastic? I think that was just the coolest thing ever. So having guests within your space can feel stressful potentially. Yeah. So don't necessarily do that if that is going to cause you more anxiety, but keep in mind you can start small. You can start inviting people that you feel comfortable with to come in and observe what's going on. So again, you are creating these allies who truly know what is happening in your space. Record snippets of lessons. Share your lesson plans with your administrator, whether they want them or not. Sometimes that's kind of nice if you're required to write lesson plans anyway. Make sure somebody's got eyes on them. But yeah, like really connect with those people who are in your community. Invite guest speakers in from your community. Like that's another really great way to get people on your side of like understanding what it is that you do. Because if they're community leaders and community members that have strong voices, invite them in to talk with your school. Like invite in your local folks to be career speakers or experts or something like that, so that you can connect. But again, like just getting people in our spaces and seeing our stories can be super beneficial for everybody.
Yeah, that's such great advice. I love it. And as people are like listening and thinking about all the great things that you do and just how you're, kicking off a new year, and we're now going into the third year of kind of being in a pandemic, if you were to give people like one thing to start with, what would it be?
my best advice would be that librarianship is a marathon, not a sprint, and to start small.
Yeah.
If you try to do 10 things, it doesn't matter what those 10 things are, you'll probably not be able to do them well. So pick something that you feel is in your wheelhouse that you are successful at. So if you feel like you do a really great job of designing promotional materials, maybe that's where you go. If your wheelhouse, like your strength, is conversations with people, then maybe make a goal of having conversations with some folks that either you've wanted to have in-depth conversations with, or maybe you haven't had a chance to talk to, like your new teachers or new administrators, like those kinds of folks. If you want to have it be like parent communication, if that's something that you think would be truly beneficial, there's not one thing that everybody should do. It's what you feel is going to be best for your environment and for you. So think about all of the possibilities and pick one. And then go from there.
That is great advice. I love it. I always tell people that I'm like, just start with one thing that you're good at, like one thing that you shine at, and then you can add on, but it's hard to do like everything perfect anytime, but especially when we're starting and we're advocating for ourselves, or if we've been advocating for, multiple years, like this year, like one of my goals is to give myself a break more and to remember that we are loud enough, like we are doing enough. And the things that we do in our library are fantastic. And so I appreciate you sharing your story and all of your advice and ideas. And you're amazing, my friend.
Thank you. And I truly, like, a lot of the things that I get are from other people. Yeah. So I borrow ideas from school librarians all over the place. I find a lot on Twitter. Twitter is kind of where I lurk and see great things that people are doing. I attend conference, like virtual things that are available for free. There's so many places, and school librarians are very generous with their time and with their expertise, and they really want to connect with and support their fellow colleagues. So, like the stuff that I get that I'm really excited about to try was never my idea to begin with. It was somebody else's. So all of these people that you can connect with through Future Ready Libraries, through your state or national associations, or through your school district, or your other ways that you connect with school library community, those are your people. They feel you. They understand you in a way that nobody else is going to. So reach out, ask questions, ask for support. If somebody has a great idea and they've put it out there publicly, they're probably okay with you copying what they're doing. With credit, saying this fabulous idea came from this person. Isn't it so great? But yeah, we are stronger together 100%. So think about all of those things, all the podcasts, all the articles, all the ways that school librarians share stuff with each other. Again, take a breath. You don't have to do all of the things.
Yeah.
Maybe pick, a couple that help you feel like you have growth or give you a boost. Because that's the other thing, like advocacy can lift us up. Like it tells us the really phenomenal stuff that is happening, all the programs that we do. When we tell other people our story, that lets us see, like, okay, I really am doing a good job. Sometimes we question that. We wonder, like, am I really doing a good job? Yes, you are. You 100% are. And advocacy will help you see all of those great things that you do.
Oh, I love it. Advocacy will lift us up. I love that. Yes. Thank you, Courtney, for joining me today. I just appreciate what you've shared and everything that all the great things. I read what you're doing and sharing. And so we really appreciate it. And for our listeners, you can find Courtney. I know she would love it if you followed her on social. So tell us your handle on Twitter.
So on Twitter, I'm at Live Love Library, LIVLUV Library. I do have a locked account right now because of, stuff. So please request to be added. If I can tell that you are a school librarian, I'm going to okay it. But we just have to be a little cautious with some of the things that are going on right now. So yep, I have a locked account, but please, if you're a school librarian, request to be added.
Yeah, thank you so much. That will be great. And we'll include if there's any resources that she has, and also you will get a certificate of professional development that you can download and fill out to use. So as always, thank you to all of our listeners for joining us for this episode of the Future Ready Librarian podcast series, Leading from the Library. And a very special thank you to our sponsors, Follett. You make a difference in our library, schools, and within our lives, and that of our students every day. We appreciate everything that you do. If you have any questions or you want to be a guest on the show, please feel free to reach out to me at shannonmcclintockmiller@gmail.com or tag me at Shannon M. Miller, because I'm always happy to have more guests sharing their stories. I hope you can take what you learned in today's podcast and put it to use within your practice as a future-ready librarian. Until next time, friends, keep finding ways to lead within and from your library.